Good morning, my fellow treasure hunters and explorers. Today I want to do a video about Wupatki National Monument, also known as Wutki Pueblo. It's found a few miles northeast of Flagstaff. Some pretty amazing things at this little pueblo. At one time it housed over 100 people, but there's also some very intriguing things there in that area. There were at one time over 53 scarlet macaws that were found there, and other parrots. These birds obviously came up from the jungles of Mexico, either through trade or by the people that traveled there. Probably came up from the Maya, because the Wupatki civilization predates the Aztec entering into Mexico City. In fact, the people that are at Wupatki were probably some of the pre-Aztecs. There's also a ball court there, and as many of you that are familiar with the ball courts of South and Central America, this is the furthest one that is known this far north into Arizona. So this is the furthest north one. The furthest north ball court that's been uncovered. It's also believed that Wupatki, the civilization underwent extreme drought, and that's what accounted for the people leaving the area. Interestingly, there is a blowhole near the ball court at Wupatki that air is blown out of in the daytime. Cool air is blown out of this with such force that it can blow your hat off your head, or, if you drop dust, it'll blow it up out of there. And at nighttime, air is sucked into the blowhole. And they have done tests several times, and they have put chemical tracers into the system, into those fissures, and found that other blowholes over 30 miles away, the chemical tracers were recovered or sensed. The chemical tracers came out through that system over 30 miles away. Perhaps even much further. That's as far as they're telling us. It is my belief that these fissures, this great chasms and blowholes go all the way to the Grand Canyon. And I'm going to present some evidence that I think could contribute to this. I'm actually going to read directly from a site. It's almost unbelievable what they've got here. It says, blowholes are commonly associated with ocean coastlines. They exist in the desert too. One of the most well-known is at Wutki Pueblo near Flagstaff. Blowholes are essentially small openings in the earth where air blows out or gets sucked in, acting as a natural fan of sorts. Researchers in northern Arizona believe the Wupatki blowhole is connected to an extensive underground system of fractures. This particular one measures a few inches across and has been enclosed in a masonry box so visitors can lean over for a blast of cold air on a hot summer day. Temperature and atmospheric pressure determines the direction of airflow through the day. When it's warmer and outside pressure is lower than the inside the blowhole, air flows out, sometimes up to 30 miles an hour. The reverse happens when it's colder outside and air pressure is higher. The heavier, denser air is pulled in. In the 1960s, researchers with the Rand Corporation studied several blowholes in the Wupatki area. They sent chemical tracers into the cracks, some of which showed up at other blowholes some 30 miles away. Blowholes are often associated with archaeological sites. The one at Wupatki Pueblo is beside a spacious ball court believed to have been built by indigenous people in the area hundreds of years ago. The Hopi, Zuni, Navajo, and Southern Paiute all have traditional names for the desert blowhole, and they all refer to the sacred wind. Okay. Wupatki National Monument contains many earth cracks, fissures, and vents, some of which are surface openings, to a regional system of underground caverns of more than 7 billion cubic feet in volume. Let me repeat that, over 7 billion cubic feet in volume. Any of you have an idea how big those caverns must be? I don't know how they figured that out. Some portions of this system exchange air with the atmosphere, pulling air in overnight and releasing it during the day. Some of the vents and earth cracks are referred to as blowholes, as they move a sufficient volume of air to create noticeable amounts of in or out the vent. So is it any wonder that the Navajos, the Hopis, the Zunis, the Aztec, the Paiutes would all refer to these blowholes as the sacred wind, or the earth's breath, or the place of the emergence? The Zuni believes that this is one of the areas that is connected to the Simpapu in the Grand Canyon. The blowhole at Wupatki Pueblo is important for the Pai, Hopi, Zuni, Daini, or the Navajo, and the Southern Paiute people, but it was not formally documented until 1964, when it was stabilized as part of the Wupatki Ball Court. Much like the Simpapu, a small blowing vent within ceremonial kiva structures, the Wupatki blowhole remains a powerful symbol of the place of emergence, and has an important connection between the surface, underworld, and the sky, known by the Hopi as, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but I don't know the pronunciation, which means the wind's home or breath from the mountains. The blowhole at Wupatki was previously home to a shrine, which has been moved due to monument visitation. Hopi elders have also suggested that the vent may have been used to warn of impending changes to weather during critical agriculture seasons. For the Zuni, it's where Mother Earth's breath is felt, and a place of power and meditation. The Paiute elders confirm it as a place of immense power and an area to gather medicine and spiritual strength. The various bands of Southern Paiute know the blowhole as a place of immense power and song, learning that it is deeply connected with the greater landscape on which it is located. The Southern Paiute call the blowhole Home of the Wind, or the House of the Wind. They would travel to visit and learn songs that would bring rain. The Navajo people also maintain a shrine there. One elder shared that their family left offerings at the feature after someone from the community was knocked unconscious by a gust of wind. One site, known as Simpapu Cavern, was documented. 5 of the 6 surveyed areas contain archaeological sites. 3 blowholes contain prehistoric features or directly associated with blowholes, and 3 earth cracks or fissures contain different cultural materials. 1 earth crack is at least 500 feet deep and was blocked off by the National Park Service in 1964 as a potential hazard. 2 other blowholes have been filled in recently. Isn't that mysterious that all of a sudden this Grand Canyon underground caverns and this system of caverns and perhaps living quarters, that we find all kinds of possible evidence towards huge underground caverns in this area that lead all the way to the Grand Canyon. Interestingly, it was the time of the Sunset Crater volcano around 1080 AD that the Sunset Crater volcano went off and covered the area with volcanic ash. And that led to much more fertile soil in the area. and there also must have been an increase in the water that was available. Now, I have a theory that may account for not only the underground cities, the emergence, but as well as why water could have shown up all of a sudden at this area at Wupatki. Over 100 miles away to the west, on the north rim of the Grand Canyon, we find Vulcan's Throne, which is associated with the Unicrit volcanic field. This volcanic field also exploded or went off about this same time. Pyroclastic flow flowed over the rim of the Grand Canyon and filled the canyon up nearly to the rim. This is 4,500 feet. So the water level is around 1,058 feet and the rim is 4,500 feet. That would have made a massive dam and backed the water up all the way to Marble Canyon and beyond. At Marble Canyon, the rim of the canyon is 3,600 feet, so the water would have been all the way to the rim of the canyon at Marble Canyon. Any cavern, cave, or underground city or citadel in that area from Vulcan's Throne, which is near St. George, Utah, all the way back to Marble Canyon near Page, Arizona, would have been completely filled with water. Any cavern, any cave that was on the side or entering into the Grand Canyon would have been completely filled with water. And as we know, all those caverns are limestone. There's limestone, sandstone, and all these types of soft erodible materials is what's led to all these caves being formed in the Grand Canyon. So all these would have been filled with water. Any civilization that was living in this area at this time would have been forced out of the ground in a great emergence. This could have forced the people that were living in the caverns or around the caverns that Kincaid discovered. This could have easily forced them out because the water would have been all the way to the rim of the canyon or nearly there in that area. Well, if you go 45 miles back up the river from there, you put you right at Kawangut Rapids. And right at Kawangut Rapids is the area where there's numerous caves that can be seen from the river as well as on Google Earth. And this is the area that I believe that Kincaid's underground cave and cavern, the treasure cave, was located. This would have been completely filled up with water for a period of time. So anybody living in this area would have been forced out. Also, this would have forced water up out of the ground in many springs all over around Flagstaff and all the Navajo lands, the Hopi lands. All the lands on both sides of the river would have experienced massive springs and rivers of water that would flowing. Some other interesting things about Wupatki is that there were over 53 scarlet macaws found there. And the scarlet macaws came from the jungles in Mexico, and so they were brought up and brought there by trade or by the peoples that moved back and forth in that region. Wupatki was abandoned in 1225 or around 1225, and it was shortly thereafter that the Aztecs showed up in Mexico. So once the Vulcan's Throne, once the lava falls was breached, once the pressure behind the lava plug pushed through and started to erode away the dam, the water that was being forced back upstream and watered all these places was drained out. And it just so happened that at this time a great drought occurred that pushed the people that were living at Wupatki and in the surrounding area. Chaco Canyon was another one of these civilizations that were similar features and had a lot of similar religious things that were found there when they were excavated and studied. They were abandoned about this time as these groups of people moved further south towards the coast, towards Mexico and more year-round water sources. And so some of these things, we start to see this pattern of how things make sense with these volcanoes and with these migrations and with how certain civilizations were able to live and survive in some areas. There's also an area near where I live on the Arizona Strip that was a nice, beautiful village that probably had 100 people living in it up on a mesa, and there isn't any evidence that there were any springs or anything like that there. However, if that Vulcan's throne, what created the dam, which is now at Lava Falls, water would have backed up across the landscape and provided, there would have been literally a lake near this village. So what caused these massive fissures in the earth that allows air to flow back and forth that may account for the underground caverns of the Grand Canyon? One of my theories is that the huge meteor that hit east of Flagstaff, that's known as Meteor Crater National Monument today, I believe that that meteor hit so hard that it fractured the earth in many directions. I also believe that with the meteor that hit Meteor Crater, there were many meteors that came out of the sky in that meteor shower and made many impact craters in a line all the way from Meteor Crater all the way up into Utah, over 200 miles away. And I have studied this and documented over 40 of these massive craters that occur in a line from Meteor Crater all the way to Hatch, Utah. There's over 40 of them, and they occur within a mile or two on either side of this direct line from Meteor Crater all the way to Hatch, Utah. And I'll show some of them in this video. I've been to many of them. I've seen them. They're massive holes in the ground. I've talked to a lot of geologists about it, and there's a lot of mixed feelings about what caused them. Most of the geologists will say they were created by collapsing limestone caverns that collapsed. Well, if that's the case, why is this limestone cavern system in a line from Meteor Crater all the way to Hatch, Utah, and you can't find them hardly anywhere else in that area? They're all in a line 200 miles long. Was there an underground river system? When that meteor hit, it fractured that and blew water up out of those? Is that what created those underground? Did it come from underground, or did it come from the sky? To me, it looks like they came in from the sky. And because of the limestone formation that was there over several hundred years, over 1,000 years, water has eroded them down to where they look like more like a sinkhole than a crater today. But once again, the evidence shows that they're all in a line for 200 miles from Meteor Crater all the way up to Hatch, Utah. I believe that this impact fractured the earth one way or the other and caused massive things to occur within the subsurface of the land. This could account for some of these underground fissures, some of these underground cracks. It could have contributed to the volcanism that was going on, the earthquakes that happened. So between the volcanism and the Meteor Crater, it would have been easy for these fissures to have been created prior to the events of the volcano that backed the water up and, I believe, filled up these fissures in the ground and forced water out, and also probably forced out any civilizations that were living down under the ground. Anyway, you can add this to your research and do a little of your own research. I'm going to post a couple links to a couple videos that I think are very helpful and tell a little bit more about the civilization of Wupatki. And I'll also show some of the civilization evidences that are around the Vulcan's throne area. there's a huge crop terraces area. There's over 200 acres of crop terraces that go down in above the Vulcan's Throne and go down towards the Colorado River, where a river channel once flowed down. There's also many smaller ruins and civilizations or groups that lived along the Colorado River plateau from the Vulcan's Throne area all the way to Page, Arizona. Anyway, I hope this gives you some ideas or helps you in your research or study, and take care and have a great day.